Made with spoken. Accidental Teacher by Philip Keyes. Digital narration performed by multiple digital voices. Chapter 1. Farewell. I walked into the chapel with Bernice, my wife, at my side. Together we moved slowly down the aisle toward the two closed caskets at the front, covered in flowers. Soft music played in the background. I can't remember what it was, just a feeling of loss, sadness, and even a sense of completion. On top of the caskets were two gold-framed photos of my parents. They always said they would die together, of old age. And in a sense they did, 5 days apart, in the same room. If old age can be called a sickness at all. Well done, I say. As we continued forward, we greeted family and friends. The funeral director met us near the front and ushered us into our seats. When a stillness settled over the sanctuary, he nodded for me to come to the podium. I stood, regained my composure, and walked to the podium. I looked out over the faces, family friends of my parents, friends of my brothers, and my own. I paused. I glanced at my notes, realizing that I had stood in many rooms as a teacher and preacher. But this was different. I took a breath, and on cue, I began. Good morning, and welcome. Thank you for coming today to my parents' memorial service. Today we say farewell to. My words came out automatically, as if I were back at a university graduation ceremony, familiar territory after 40 years of teaching. But this was a different kind of commencement. My parents, Reverend Leslie James Keyes, and his wife Audrey Mae Nee Finch Keyes, were now graduating to glory. I delivered my farewell without shedding a tear, a fact that unsettled me. Why wasn't I reacting as everyone else seemed to be? I pushed the thought aside. My parents lay side by side in their caskets, and I knew I had to fulfill my father's request to conduct the service as they had wished. I couldn't let him down. Everyone, family, friends, funeral directors, looked to me to ensure everything was done properly. I braced myself. You can do this. And for reasons that still baffle me, my parents chose me, the youngest of 3 brothers, to handle this final task and the administration of their affairs. They believed in me, just as they believed in God, and just as they believed they would die together. So here we were, for exactly that reason. They believed. I continued my speech. I first met Leslie and Audrey Keyes on August 7, 1955, at Auburn Hospital. It was such a memorable event that we celebrated that occasion annually ever since. A spontaneous ripple of laughter broke the solemnity of the room. My middle brother Stephen thought it was the best joke ever given at a funeral. My eldest brother Tony just looked distant. His mind was elsewhere. My mind drifted back to the beginning. My parents had planned for 4 children, but when I was born with a speech and hearing deficit, everything changed. 3 sons were suddenly enough. Mum longed for a daughter, but instead she found herself becoming my protector and teacher. In the 1950s, there was a strong social stigma attached to being deaf and mute. You were perceived as being stupid, dumb, an idiot without intelligence. Mum refused that label. She enabled me, patiently and persistently, to speak every word correctly. Dad was my hero and provider, a visionary, an achiever, an extrovert, who always wanted me to be out there.
You're a bit of a dark horse. You should talk about what you have achieved, he would say.
Dad was, and continued to be, the one who skided about my achievements. I would just smile and shrug my shoulders. As a young teen, I found it difficult to mix. A few friends were enough for me. Now I was here at their funeral. Funerals have a way of gathering everyone, the loved, the tolerated, and the unexpected. The reception can be the most awkward of moments, with people chatting without purpose or meaning. The overuse and well-meaning use of the word condolence and the phrase sorry for your loss seemed to irritate me. I was glad to be the facilitator of the event. It allowed me to move around the room without being caught up in one long, protracted conversation. I had a perfect escape clause. Please excuse me. I just need to say hello to some of the other guests. I don't feel natural mingling with so many people. This is not normal for me. Not my comfort zone. People get stage fright, not me. I'm fine on the stage, speaking or in the classroom teaching, where I am in control of the narrative. But mingling and being social is something else. This is where I come unstuck. I will be glad when it's over and I am home in my own space with just a few friends. The only momentary relief was the classical music playing in the background and the warm, sun-drenched open space where people stood. Not like in the movies, where a funeral is often under cloudy, overcast skies. Mum would have loved this day. She always complained about the cold, unsettled weather in Melbourne. She longed to return to the warm, tropical climate of sunny Brisbane. Mum, it seems the Lord heard your prayer. Bernice and I walked around greeting people and handing out personalized thank you cards. The card had a photo of us, 3 brothers and their spouses, set against the background of a painting our mum, also an artist, had created of an Australian landscape. She loved the Australian bush. As Bernice and I moved through the reception, I became more aware of my brothers. 3 men, cut from the same cloth, yet very different in the way we carried ourselves and the ways we coped. Neither Tony nor Stephen held death well. Tony, usually more outgoing, seemed undone by it all. Later, in a quiet moment, he told me.
Stephen laughed during my eulogy,
said Tony. That had upset him. Not long after, Stephen approached me and complained.
Tony went overtime. He broke the agreement we had made.
Both were grieving, both were reacting, and neither could quite see past their own hurt. Their behavior only reaffirmed why the responsibility had fallen to me. Someone needed to hold the center, to steady the day, to absorb what neither of them could carry in that moment. I had often said that managing a funeral was like walking on eggshells, and this one was no different. Though our behavior and interests were different, my brothers and I shared many joyful and painful moments. We did nothing in half measure. If we did something, it was all in together, like finding a discarded old motorcycle and pushing it home to rebuild, only to be told to return it to the paddock that we had stolen it from. We thought it was finders keepers. And if we didn't like each other, we were at each other's throats. We were each other's most feared rivals. A small scar on my forehead from falling bricks and homemade spears, and holes in the fly screen doors from spears that missed their intended target, stand as testimony to that. My mother often said she prayed for the patience of Job. I suspect that was why she secretly longed to have a girl. Well, eventually she did get granddaughters. Looking back, I can appreciate how my brothers were also challenged by my arrival in the family.
He's not the same as the rest of us.
Be careful. Look out for your younger brother.
As a child growing up, it is difficult to fully appreciate or understand what is going on. My grandfather made it plain.
"He's not one of ours,"
said Granddad. He had no idea that statement would serve to ignite the flame of determination in my parents and myself. A family that was about to have their lives turned upside down, with son number 3, me. They say the eldest wants to lead the world, and the youngest wants to change it. Well, welcome. You may be wondering, like the other guests, how it is that the youngest member of the family was the MC for this special farewell service. This is not the status quo for English or Australian culture. This duty is often the role of the eldest or the second in the family. There were 2 reasons. The first revealed itself that day. Grief had unsettled my brothers, and tension lingered beneath the surface. Someone needed to hold the center, and somehow that role fell to me. But the second reason reaches back much further. How did I go from being a young, shy, inferior boy with a 50% hearing deficit and severe speech impairment, considered deaf and dumb, to confidently conducting a funeral service and managing the affairs of my parents? Week after this event, almost as if by divine intervention, I had time to grieve with my family. The timing was perfect. Well before all of this had taken place, Bernice had booked a family holiday cruise for all of us to celebrate our 40th wedding anniversary. Our son and daughter and their families joined us. At one point, our son commented to his mum,
"Is Dad okay? He seems to be very quiet,"
said our son. Bernice said,
He's just processing it all.
and she was right. In my quiet moments I cried, and I missed them deeply. But the real question remained. How did the shy, uncertain boy, once dismissed and overlooked, become the one chosen to lead his parents' farewell and carry the responsibility that followed? Chapter 2. Discovery. On August 7, 1955, at Auburn Hospital, A nurse carried a newborn child to a young mother waking in her bed.
Mrs. Audrey Keyes, here is your son,
the nurse said. Mum reached out her arms and drew me close, eager to cuddle her third son.
What will we call him, Audrey?
Asked my father.
I want to call him Philip, with one L.
All right, Audrey. Philip, with one L, it is.
Yes, that's right, Les.
But why one L?
He asked.
One L is the proper Greek spelling for Philip like Prince Philip, the Queen's husband. When you register his name, make sure it is spelt with only one L.
I promise, dear,
Dad said. As Mum began to breastfeed me, she noticed immediately that something was wrong. The milk flowed back out through my nose. I spluttered, choked, and struggled to breathe. Everything that went in came straight back out. Dad called the nurse, who returned with the doctor for a closer examination. To their surprise, they discovered I had a cleft palate. My soft palate at the back of my mouth was split in half. There was no natural way to stop the milk from flowing upwards and out through my nose.
It appears that your son has a cleft palate,
said the doctor.
A cleft palate? How can this be? I can't see it. He doesn't have split mouth,
said my father.
No. Not all cleft palates are the same,
said the doctor.
Philip has a type of cleft palate, often missed because it sits hidden beneath the mucous lining of the mouth.
Our parents were even more confused by the doctor's explanation and needed practical answers, not medical jargon.
How will I feed my son? What am I going to do?
Mum asked.
Don't worry, Mrs. Keyes,
the doctor replied.
One of our nursing staff will provide a specially adapted baby's bottle to help you.
Mum and Dad were grateful, but deeply distressed.
I'm concerned, Les. Is Philip going to be all right? Why didn't they see this earlier?
Mum asked. Much of what happened in those first weeks comes to me through the stories Mum and Dad told throughout my childhood. On special occasions at church, particularly on Mother's Day, Mum was asked to share her story. As she stood at the podium and opened her notes, I recall how nervous she was. At that time, she wasn't accustomed to public speaking. I felt proud to be part of her story. I felt special. Mum said she had to find all sorts of ways to feed me. In those days, boys were not included in private conversations among women. Feeding babies, especially difficult ones, was considered women's business. As a parent now, I can only imagine the perseverance required. She had 3 boys, one aged 4, one aged 2, and a newborn who could not eat properly. Dad worked long hours, often from 7 in the morning until 6 at night, sometimes half a day on Saturdays. Mum carried the weight of those early months alone. Her determination became the foundation for everything that followed. At the time, I didn't understand the significance of what was unfolding. My parents were told that I would be one of the first children to receive a new and innovative medical procedure for a cleft palate. They were grateful for how things turned out and would often tell others with quiet pride. As a baby of at least 6 months of age, I have no recollection of my first appointment with the specialist. I don't remember the waiting room or the conversation that followed. I only know that my attending surgeon was Dr. David Day, ear, nose and throat ENT specialist, and specially trained in plastic surgery. All the consultations, the surgery, and the follow-up sessions, and speech therapy classes, all took place at the Royal Alexandra Children's Hospital in Sydney, until I was around 7 or 8 years old. So, I will do what all memoir writers must sometimes do. I will dig into my subconscious, borrow from other memories, lean on historical details, and reconstruct what most likely took place. Dad and Mum entered the outpatients department at the Children's Hospital and walked over to the reception desk.
Good morning. How may I assist you?
Asked the receptionist, looking up from her typewriter.
We have an appointment to see Dr. Day, the ear, nose and throat specialist,
Dad said.
Your name, sir?
Les and Audrey Keyes.
Yes, Mr. and Mrs. Keyes. We have you down for 11 a.m. You're a little early, but that's fine. There's tea and coffee over on the side table. Just help yourselves. The doctor will be with you shortly.
Dad and Mum went and sat down in the large waiting room. I imagine the walls timber-panelled, with that faint smell of fresh paint and new dark green carpet, typical of late 50s and early 60s style. The building had only recently been opened. The furniture was contemporary for its time. On the coffee table lay copies of the Australian Women's Weekly, Reader's Digest, and a couple of car magazines displaying the latest Holden models. Dad quickly grabbed one of the car magazines and flicked through the pages.
One day, we'll buy one of these, a new Holden special,
he said. And, eventually, we did. Meanwhile, Mom was too focused on me to care about cars. She checked that I was comfortable, sucking on a dummy in the pram. Yes, I was okay. Or as okay as a baby with a cleft palate could be. Mum and Dad were always smartly dressed for appointments. This I do remember from other visits. Mum wore a dark green suede jacket, a brooch pinned neatly to the collar, a hat, and either white or black gloves with red lipstick. I remember the brooch most clearly because, when she carried me, it was at eye level and within reach. My fingers loved it. Dad wore a black or grey suit with a white shirt and tie. In those days, colourful shirts were considered inappropriate for serious appointments.
Mr. and Mrs. Keys, Dr. Day will see you now. Go straight in,
said the receptionist. They entered the consulting room and were greeted by a young surgeon in his 30s.
Good morning. I'm Dr. David Day. Thank you for coming in. Please, have a seat. You've been referred by your family doctor regarding your son, Philip?
Yes, that's correct,
said Dad.
I understand your son has been diagnosed with a cleft palate?
Yes,
Dad replied.
May I see him?
I imagine he walked over and gently picked me up.
Good morning, Philip. It's a pleasure to meet you,
he might have said. In my mind's eye, I see myself smiling and gurgling as babies do, thinking, this man doesn't seem so scary. He looks about the same age as Dad. All right, I won't poop my pants, vomit on you, or cry. I like to think I gave him a smile of approval. Handing me back to Mum, he said,
Let's take a closer look over on the examination bench.
He shone a bright torch into my mouth and pressed my tongue down with a wooden spatula.
Yes,
he murmured in that half-private, half-public language doctors use. I looked sideways from Mum's face. Her hands held me. Her eyes were everything. I had no idea that I would see a lot more of this man over the next few years, or that he would play such a significant role in my life.
Did the hospital doctor explain Philip's condition?
They said he had a cleft palate,
Dad replied.
But we're confused. How can this be? He doesn't have a deformed mouth or distorted face.
Not all cleft palates are the same,
said Dr. Day.
There are variations. The most familiar type is the one you described, an obvious visible split in the lip and gums, often extending up toward the nose, with the palate also opened. That's not the case for your son. Philip has what is known as a bifid uvula, with a submucous cleft palate. The cleft extends from the start of the soft palate to the back, splitting the uvula in two. It's a hidden cleft palate.
Hidden, that was the key word. Little did my parents or I realize that a hidden cleft would be more challenging than a visible one. Because it was hidden, people were less likely to understand, and more likely to mock.
I'm sorry, but I don't really understand,
said Mum. Mum was the type of person who insisted on a clear explanation. She wasn't about to leave with unanswered questions. Dad sat awkwardly quiet. He knew when Mum was like this, there was no stopping her.
Let me explain. Place your index finger along the roof of your mouth until you feel the soft tissue. Do you feel that?
Yes,
they both said.
That is the beginning of your soft palate. It extends to the uvula, the small dangling part at the back. In Philip's case, the muscles of the soft palate have not joined properly in the middle. The surface looks almost normal, but underneath, the palate is effectively split. I'll shine the torch down his throat. Look carefully.
Mum leaned in.
Yes, I see it,
she said quietly.
But why didn't the doctors see this earlier, when he was born?
Said Mum.
Because the mucous lining can hide it. We refer to this as a bifid, or split uvula, with a submucous cleft palate. You're fortunate it was picked up before you left the hospital. Sometimes we don't discover it until a child starts to speak, and a split uvula is the only visible clue.
He paused to let that sink in.
You see, the soft palate and uvula have several jobs. First, they prevent food and drink from flowing back up and out through the nose. That's why Philip's milk comes through his nose. But the palate also plays a major role in speech, and even in singing. It moves up and down to control how much air escapes through the nose. For certain sounds, like G and K, we press the back of the tom against the soft palate to stop air leaking through the nose. When that seal isn't working properly, those consonants can sound nasal or distorted. The cleft can also affect hearing,
he went on.
Children with cleft palates often have fluid buildup in the middle ear. That restricts hearing. So, Philip's hearing will be compromised. He may not always be able to hear or understand what is being said, and that will affect his speech. He may think he's saying a word correctly, but if he can't hear the sounds clearly, it's harder for his brain and tongue to match them.
Dad cleared his throat.
Doctor, I'm sorry to interrupt, but Audrey and I have been really challenged by all this since Philip was born. We'd like some clarity.
Of course, that's why I'm here.
Well, it's been a real struggle for Audrey,
Dad said.
She's been worried about what he can and can't eat, worried that he might choke, worried if he's getting enough food, and worried most of all if Philip will ever be normal. Family and friends are telling us all sorts of things.
Mum's questions tumbled out.
Doctor, is this hereditary? Did I do something or eat something that caused it? Will Philip be deaf and dumb? People are telling us it runs in the family. Is that true? Will he be able to speak properly, like other children, and go to a normal school?
Mum pressed.
No, Mrs. Keyes,
said Dr. Day.
There is no evidence to suggest that you unintentionally ingested something that caused this kind of defect, or that it is hereditary.
Oh, that's a relief,
she said, exhaling.
Well, Les,
Mum said, half smiling.
Your dad thinks otherwise. He says this certainly didn't come from his side of the family.
Mr. and Mrs. Keyes, I understand you have many questions,
said Dr. Day.
They're genuine concerns. I'll do my best to answer them. Over time, much of this will become clearer. The exact cause of a cleft palate is still not fully understood.
So what happens now, Doctor?
Dad asked.
Philip will need to undergo a series of operations. We'll schedule the first sometime between 6 and 9 months of age. The surgery usually takes around 2 hours and is done under general anesthetic. The aim is to close the gap in the roof of his mouth and realign the muscles and lining of the palate. Here at the Royal Alexandra Hospital, we're also trialing new plastic surgery techniques for cleft palates. Instead of taking skin grafts from other parts of the body, we're using tissue from inside the cheek. It's softer and more similar to the palate tissue. We believe it will lead to better movement, less scarring, and more natural speech in the long term.
He paused again. He looked at Mum and Dad.
Philip would be one of the first children here in Australia, possibly the first with this specific pattern of cleft, to benefit from these combined approaches. That's why I'm asking your permission to include him in this new program. With your consent, our team will document his surgery and recovery to help other children in the future. How old is Philip now?
He asked.
He was born on August 7th, 1955.
Mum replied.
He's 3 months old.
The earliest we could schedule surgery would be February or March next year,
said Dr. Day.
We don't want to leave it too late. His palate is still soft and malleable. The older he becomes, the more challenging it is to reshape and retrain the muscles.
He's so young, Doctor. I'm nervous for him,
said Mum.
With this new combination of plastic surgery techniques and coordinated speech therapy, your son has every chance of developing normal speech and leading a full life. The sooner we begin, the sooner Philip can start that journey.
I imagine Mum and Dad glancing at each other, fear and hope holding hands.
Yes,
Dad might have said eventually.
We want to give him the best chance. We agree.
And we need to watch closely Philip's hearing,
Dr. Day added.
Don't be alarmed, just patient and concerned. He will suffer with earaches and a hearing deficit which will impact on his speech development. It is important for him to attend speech therapy. He may not be hearing you accurately,
Dr. Day said.
And if he can't hear the full range of sounds, it becomes very difficult for him to reproduce them properly. That's why hearing and speech are so closely linked.
At the time, this was just more information for my parents to absorb, another unknown added to an already uncertain path. For me, it meant nothing at all. I was a baby. I had no idea that how I heard the world would shape how the world heard me.
We'll book in a date for March. Between now and then, if you have any concerns, please contact my office. I'll also arrange for you to meet the rest of the team, Dr. Nelson, Dr. Grattan-Smith, and Miss Miles, so you know who will be looking after Philip.
In that moment, a path was laid out in front of us, a path of operations, clinics, and long hours of speech therapy. I had no say in any of it, of course. I was just a baby. The decisions were made by my parents and by a young surgeon with a vision, and those decisions would influence the direction of my journey.
The end. We hope you've enjoyed this production of
Accidental Teacher, made with spoken.
The Accidental Teacher is my memoir, a slice of my apple pie. It is baked for the reader who sits at my table. It is for the person who is trying to make sense of their own journey, and who wonders how struggle can turn into something useful. Today I am sharing my story. Bon appetit. I was born in the 1950s with a hidden cleft palate. Hidden is the key word. It was not obvious to anyone looking at me. I looked normal enough. But when I spoke, something was different. People could not work out what I was saying. They leaned in, puzzled, and then sometimes they laughed. I did not understand why. In my own head, the words sounded clear. I assumed they should sound clear to everyone else as well. That was the beginning of a long road. Operations, clinics, speech therapy, and long hours of effort just to pronounce what other children could say without thinking. It is a strange thing to have a disability that people cannot see. If they cannot see it, they often do not understand it. They think you are odd, or slow, or careless. They do not realize you are working harder than anyone else, just to speak a sentence. As a child, I wanted one thing: to be understood. For a long time I felt caught between two worlds, the world of the hearing and the world of the deaf. I was not fully either one. I could hear but not properly. I could speak but not easily. I misheard words, I mispronounced them. I often felt as if I was always a step behind the conversation. I hated school. It was not simply a place of learning. It was a place of exposure. Reading aloud was terrifying. Speaking up was risky. Children can be quick to notice difference, and even quicker to mock. I wanted to be understood so badly. I tried repeating myself, even shouting at times, but it only caused more frustration. Yet, something else was happening underneath it all. Because communication did not come easily to me, I began to pay attention to it. I watched faces. I listened carefully. I became sensitive to tone, expression, and silence. I noticed when people were confused. I noticed when someone was left out. I noticed when meaning was missed. I did not know it at the time, but I was being trained. Not trained for a career, but trained for understanding. Teaching did not appear early as a recognizable gift. As if by accident, I fell into it. My childhood did not look like the childhood of someone destined to stand in front of classrooms or lecture theaters. I was not confident. I was not naturally articulate. I was not the boy with his hand in the air. I was the boy trying to get the words out. But slowly, step by step, something began to change. That frustration, the constant desire to be understood, started to turn outward. I began to want others to understand as well. I began to want to help people learn, not just facts, but to be understood. I could readily see why a speaker became boring or disengaged with their audience. I cringed, but at the same time empathized and wanted to help them find words. Over time, my struggle became a kind of direction. Eventually, I became a teacher of teachers. On my way to a conference, a taxi driver once asked me what I did for a living. I said, "I teach teachers how to teach." It was that simple. He then went on to tell me why his children couldn't understand their teacher. It is not because I planned out a perfect career. Not because it was obvious. In many ways, it was accidental, perhaps serendipitous, perhaps even providential. Or maybe it was simply the determination of wanting, so much wanting to be understood. I wanted to be understood, and I empathized deeply with others who were not. What seemed like a limitation became the doorway to a gift. Not a gift that arrived suddenly, but one that formed slowly, through persistence, failure, resilience, and grace. This memoir is not simply about my disability. It is about the deep human need to be understood. It is also about faith, family, and those who believed in me. My hope is that this story will resonate with you, like the sweet taste of apple pie. Thank you.
Professional audiobooks in a click. Spoken.